Dear Detective James Butterbrodt of the Leeds Alabama Police Department, my name is Angie Duncan, and you worked my son's overdose death in Tarrant, Alabama, 6 years ago on the morning of June 8th, 2018. Some weeks later, I called you with some serious concerns I had, and not only did you refuse the information and use a cold tone with me, but you dismissed me by saying, and I quote, "Ma'am, your son was just a junkie." That day, with the phone still in my hand, I fell to my knees on the kitchen floor, devastated by your words. I knew while on that floor that one day, if I made it through the pain and became stronger, that I would contact you again. Today is that day. Those words have stayed with me every day since you spoke them. Sir, I am not on my kitchen floor anymore. I have taken your words and the immense love for my son that burns in my soul, and I have risen up. I have taken your words and lit a fire that will not go out, and I am changing lives with them. My son's name is Drew, and Drew was not just a junkie. Drew was not just anything. Drew was everything. He was handsome, and he was tremendously funny. Drew was an artist and a writer with a depth that not everyone has. Drew was a gentleman, and he pulled out my chairs and opened doors for me. He was always the first one to jump up and clean the kitchen after dinner. He loved Alabama football, Roll Tide. He laughed loud and gave the kind of hugs that lifted you off the ground. He loved all kinds of music, but always put Fast Car by Tracy Chapman and Give 'em Hell, Alabama by the 63 Boys on all of our playlists we ever made. He was the baby whisperer, and kids always flocked to him. He was brave, and he loved animals. He would give his last $5 to a homeless guy, and he loved his grandma with his whole heart. He was wildly protective. Drew was 6'4", but always sat in my lap at least once when we were together, and he would call and ask me to sing to him over the phone when we were apart. Right before his last relapse, he had been clean for a substantial amount of time. He was working at a job he loved, building tiny houses, and had just gotten to tell his heartfelt testimony from a podium in front of his peers. Both of our hearts were hopeful for the future. Drew was one of those people who was larger than life, and after all this time, it is still hard for me to believe that death could catch him and take him down. Drew struggled with addiction starting in the ninth grade. His dad was addicted to drugs, and hopefully, sir, you have learned somewhere that addiction is generational. It is hereditary. It is also recognized in the DSM-5 as a true disorder, and for 40 years, the American Medical Association has classified addiction as a disease. Drew wanted so badly to be free, and he would take 2 steps forward, and my heart and his heart would break when he would stumble back 4. That is the nature of the beast that held him and held us, because addiction is a family disease. It affects all of us. Addiction doesn't discriminate, and overdose could even happen in your family as well. You don't know until you know, but when you know, you will never be the same. In the wake of Drew's death, I began a local organization in his name. I educate my community about harm reduction and give out free Narcan to as many people as I possibly can. I get to put my arms around other mothers who have lost their precious babies to the monster of addiction and have to deal with the ignorant stigmas that people such as yourself place on them. The stigma that says their kids aren't worth saving, and the one that says they are bad parents. I raised a United States Marine. I mention this because people often praise me for that. I always take that opportunity to tell them that I also raised an amazing kid that died from an overdose. I've kept an eye on where you are, from Tarrant to Pell City and now in Leeds. I live in Texas now, but as a child, I used to go to private school in Pell City, and I lived very close to Leeds for a while, but mostly I grew up in Cahaba Heights. You are in the communities that I am connected to. You serve my people. Sir, with all due respect, how dare you become so complacent in your job that you treat a mother who has just lost her child with such coldness? I cringe at the thought of you standing in the room that day, staring down with disdain at my beautiful child whose life had just slipped away. To you, he was just a junkie, but to me, he was the one who made me a mama. The one I read to and prayed with and pushed on the swings. The one I ran up and down the field with while cheering at soccer games and then football games. The one whose every milestone had me in awe. My firstborn. Every overdose is someone's child. My son's name is Drew.